Brawl Stars is decreasing in popularity, Clash Royale has been left in ruins, Squad Busters was a gigantic flop, and Moko was merely a blip on the radar amidst a landscape of painfully similar games. In spite of Supercell posting its best revenue figures for 2024, these statistics are heavily reliant on already established games, with new projects barely breaking through the glass ceiling, let alone seeing through it. It seems as if Supercell has lost the ability to develop appealing and popular games that stand out to the masses in today's age. In a world where mobile games are becoming more competitive and advanced as ever, Supercell can only hold onto its older games for so long. Its last massively successful game was Brawl Stars, a game released all the way back in 2018. Although Supercell has seen minor success in the form of Clash Mini, Supercell also made the decision to brazenly overcomplicate its progression system near the end of its life, forcing players to leave for alternative games and directly leading to the game's shutdown. Meanwhile, other projects such as Clash Quest barely saw a glimpse of life before being shut down, with Clash Heroes remaining radio silent since its development was revealed over 4 years ago. As you can see, the only thing most people are interested in nowadays happens to be projects associated with the Clash brand, and in spite of building up that brand to be a gaming icon, their over-reliance on nostalgia invokes more trouble than you may think. Throughout Supercell's development of their prior two games, those being Squad Busters and Moko, I've picked up on a concerning pattern pertaining to these games sharing similar mechanics to Brawl Stars. Although these mechanics are simplified in both Squad Busters and Moko, it seems as if Supercell has merely copy and pasted Brawl Stars and its game mechanics whilst changing up the environment. I can see that Moko is attempted to be original, but when compared to such games as League of Legends or dare I say Raid Shadow Legends, it blends in a little too much. It's just another monster hunting RPG that happens to be developed by Supercell. On the other hand, Squad Busters reeks of unoriginality, lack of passion and staleness. It shamelessly borrows most of the control scheme of Brawl Stars, all the while offering very little in the way of a new gameplay experience. Furthermore, it's a crossover game, which some people may enjoy whilst others may see it as a symptom of Supercell filing for creative bankruptcy. With Squad Busters specifically, I feel as if the game leans on the identity of the previous games and characters that it contains a little too much, leading to it being unable to establish any form of original identity. Instead of taking the time to create new characters and experiences, the only thing that's changed is the environment and the game mechanics, where Supercell decided to compensate for this lack of familiarity by lifting their characters from their previous games before transplanting them into Squad Busters. If this wasn't bad enough, Supercell was constantly reliant on the hype surrounding many of their Clash related projects during the earlier half of this decade, being unwilling to take risks and go global with some of these projects. Take Clash Mini for example. One could fault the game for being too reliant on the past, but this game had serious potential until Supercell decided to kill it alongside the pieces of originality it held, instead opting to release Squad Busters globally, only for Squad Busters to also flop. Despite Clash Mini being filled with prior characters from Clash of Clans and Clash Royale, it established its own identity with its own characters such as the Countess and Shield Maiden as heroes, all the while its mini catalogue consisted of new characters such as the Storm Wizard, Swordsman, Sailor and Healing Ranger, just to name a few. Most of these characters may have been inspired by other characters inside the Clash universe, but this was arguably a better option than barely creating anything original. Unfortunately, as mentioned earlier, Clash Mini was still deeply flawed as it was again too reliant on the Clash identity as well as the characters within, and although it was a charming game for the time that it was available in beta for, it never got a chance to fully develop its own identity, with Supercell regressing and being unwilling to take a risk with this new chess style game and instead relying on the Clash brand to push the game out to more players who would have otherwise been uninterested. Speaking of Supercell games that were too reliant on the Clash identity, it's time to address Clash Quest. This game was meant to be Supercell's attempt at a Candy Crush style game, crossed with the usual strategy and calculations that came in from chess, but much simpler. It honestly felt quite low effort and more or less an offline version of Clash Mini, except much more cut back and relaxed. It's no surprise that this game was taken offline only a year and a half after it entered its closed beta, because once again it fell into Supercell's trap of trying to shove their Clash branding into everything as opposed to creating something new and original. That's now 3 documented games in which Supercell relies on its past identity and association with the Clash brand to push new games that people would otherwise not care about, and it's clear that these attempts to force their branding into some of these new games didn't go to plan, considering 2 out of these 3 games addressed have been shut down. As for Clash Heroes, it is currently unclear what Supercell is doing with that game, considering considering their last teaser for the game was posted 4 years ago. However, considering a lot of his early game mechanics seem similar to what we see today within Moko, it wouldn't surprise me if Supercell got the message that people weren't interested in them shoving the Clash branding down everyone's throats, and in an attempt to disguise an otherwise mediocre gaming experience, they instead decided to reskin the game and turn it into Moko. It's hard to tell judging by the fact that the gameplay footage released from Clash Heroes is over 4 years old, but considering Supercell has quietly abandoned the project and hasn't updated anyone for a significant amount of time, I think it's safe to say that they either ditched the game or converted it into Moko. As it seems, any hint of success in regards to Supercell happens to come from calling back on the times of old. As for any attempts to establish anything in the present and if this will doom them, well, there's a whole other story waiting to be told there. With a grand total of 3 attempts to move into the present with Clash-themed branding, all 3 attempts have failed, with Supercell rumoured to have lost millions of dollars developing what was ultimately an unoriginal experience that nobody enjoyed. Their 4th attempt to march into the future with Squad Busters though, well, in spite of it going global, it was clear that this game was shoved out of the door so Supercell could say they made something for the first time since 2018 that didn't instantly get shut down. This is a consistent problem I have noticed Supercell has faced since the release of Brawl Stars, a game that almost got shut down in of itself. They lack the confidence to allow their games to breathe properly, resulting in most of their Clash related projects being shut down before their respective development teams could make any form of productive changes or before those developers could breathe an individual identity into those games. Furthermore, it seems as if Supercell has lost touch with what it means to develop a game that's new instead of maintaining a game that they first released over half a decade ago. In an age where people are craving more complicated games and experiences instead of simple games that are cash grabs, a game studio such as Supercell, known for strategy games such as Clash of Clans and Clash Royale, seems to be taking the easy route in an attempt to appeal to a younger audience as opposed to appealing to everyone like they did before. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a simple lineup of games, but Supercell hasn't traditionally done simple. Even if, say, Clash of Clans looks easy, there's still a significant skill curve in which you have to be old enough and your mind has to be developed enough to learn how to arrange your base, utilize your heroes and attacks, or funnel your armies during said attacks. Clash of Clans is made for everyone, meanwhile something such as Squad Busters just reeks of being simplistic enough to be made for children. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy playing some of the maps on Squad Busters, but the game gets boring, repetitive and stale after 10 minutes. It's what I would personally call a toilet game, especially because the game mechanics are so simple and all you have to do to fight NPCs or other players is just stand over them and let your squad do the rest of the work, with very little input required as opposed to Clash of Clans or Clash Royale. I can fault Clash Royale for being paid to win all I want, but I will admit there's a significant skill curve once you reach the leaderboards. Even if you spend all the money in the world to max out your deck, you still need to have a strategic and analytical mindset to play Clash Royale effectively. With Supercell's newer games, there's barely any of that. There's more hand holding when it comes to how you play the game, and there's more automation. Whether that be the combat mechanics of Squad Busters being heavily simplified, or Moko following a similar pattern to a lot of RPG games, it feels as if Supercell has attempted to pivot towards a direction that's too casual for its medium player base, with them vastly overestimating how many children play their games. Sure, some of Supercell's games are popular amongst children, but that's primarily thanks to those same children consuming YouTube content as opposed to actually playing the games themselves because of the skill curve. There's no nicer way of saying this. As a Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, Brawl Stars and even Heyday player, I can safely say that Supercell's new lineup of games, including their previously failed Clash projects, Squad Busters and Moko, just plainly suck. However, I'm not just talking about Supercell's failed projects and modern games. Oh no, I've got a bone to pick with Supercell's more successful and well-maintained games too. In the past few years, there's been a remarkable shift when it comes to YouTube and even Twitch content that revolves around Supercell's games. Although Clash of Clans, Clash Royale and Brawl Stars all see millions of respective players daily, a lot of people who have retired from these games or don't have as much time to play them anymore would rather watch richer or more successful players enjoy the game on their behalf, because your average everyday player doesn't have hundreds or thousands of dollars to pour into their games. Creators such as Jinxie, who has pivoted towards Clash Royale and Supercell content as of late, are usually willing to spend thousands of dollars to max out their decks, as well as spend money on some of the packs that Supercell offers for exclusive emotes that average players usually wouldn't buy. This creates an environment of exclusivity that these YouTubers and streamers can present to your average player to entertain them. Furthermore, players such as B-Rad and Ken in regards to Clash Clash Royale also have their own appeal thanks to both creators being vastly entertaining, with Ken often telling stories about his days or past experiences, whilst B-Rad offers a more competitive insight into playing the game, considering he was previously a competitive Clash Royale player long ago. Many players who have quit these games would rather see other people play on their behalf and entertain them purely because Supercell is constantly raising the competitive and even casual ceiling for their games. New brawlers constantly get added to Brawl Stars. Clash of Clans is due to release an 18th Town Hall sometime this year. Clash Royale keeps releasing evolutions month after month. If you're someone who plays all three of these games, that can be a lot of money exiting your bank account each month, and it can be overwhelming and exhausting, leading to much of the community surrounding these games quitting one or multiple of them and staying in the loop via content creators instead. This rush for Supercell to maximize profit for some of their more wealthier players at the expense of some of their casual players can be frustrating, and if Supercell doesn't slow down, they very well could push millions of casual players away from their games over time because it's less exciting working towards a destination that constantly outruns you, and it's more exciting to watch the content of someone who already made it there instead. I can't help but personally feel as if the failure of some of Supercell's more recent projects has led to them slowly but surely milking more money out of those willing to invest into their older games, which can be troublesome as Supercell's identity may start showing parallels to Rovio's, who are only really known for Angry Birds, and my goodness did they milk the shit out of that identity. As for Supercell's future and whether they're doomed, considering they're over-reliant on nostalgia and are failing to create appealing projects in the present, the forecast is certainly a grim one. Destiny is not set in stone unless Supercell personally signs that gravestone, yet we can judge whether they are doomed or not based on their past ambitions as well as their changes they have made in the present day. I believe Supercell is now fully aware that they're associated with the past more than the present, and that they're making changes to accommodate that fact, even if some of these changes may come with a seasoning of controversy. However, as we all know, thanks to the example of Angry Birds, the past cannot be leveraged into the future forever. There will come a day where a game as timeless as Clash of Clans will inevitably lose its flair thanks to technological innovations, staleness, a mismanaged update, or a game simply out-competing it. We've already seen the impact that a string of horrible updates can do to a game such as Clash Royale, which, in spite of a recent jinxie-fueled resurgence, has still lost most of its casual players because in order to climb over the mount of skill, you often have to use your money to pay for over-expensive climbing equipment or face constantly tumbling down that mountain until you give up. In regards to Brawl Stars, it's safe to say that 2024 could be considered its peak year in regards to its own popularity as well as player satisfaction, with many collaborations taking place inside of the game which drew in millions of players either short term or long term. Brawl Stars, quite like Clash of Clans, still has a chance of resurging once again provided the right conditions come into place, but Supercell cannot rely on blind luck or nostalgia forever. Inevitably there will come a day where Supercell is forced to produce a new game, whether it be reliant on the Clash identity, the Brawl Stars identity, or even something completely new that has yet to be seen, but that day will be the one that decides whether Supercell will jump headfirst into their own grave or whether they'll lease out their gravestone to another studio instead. For Supercell's sake, I can only hope that this theoretical game of theirs ends up being a hit instead of the flop, for Supercell cannot afford to have a grand total of 5 games in almost the past 7 years end up flopping. Unfortunately, unless significant change makes its way across Supercell, their inability to remain in touch with what the gaming industry craves may end up doing them in the long term. They still have time to learn from their mistakes and to create a game that will propel them into the later stages of the 2020s and even the early 2030s, but that time is swiftly running out. If Supercell wishes to survive the next decade, they need to embrace their distinctive art style and combine it with a game that isn't painfully simple. The reason Clash of Clans works as a game is because you don't have to be playing it 24/7 to progress, and you still have to develop your own strategy to raid bases successfully and defend your own. The reason why Clash Royale works is because it puts a creative spin on what a tower defense game is compared to most others that exist out there. And the reason why Brawl Stars works is because of how dynamic and competitive the gameplay can be, as well as how competent you are as utilizing your brawlers. People crave distinction, people crave complexity, but a balance between complexity and simplicity must be made. Supercell's decision to lean on simplicity instead of complexity, choosing to buy part of another mobile game studio known as SpaceX Games, which develop games such as BeatStar and Country Star, two unoriginal original piano tile knockoffs, as well as Transformers Earth Wars, which is just blatant shovelware, is a step in the wrong direction, because this decision to develop more simplistic and effortless games may end up bleeding into what Supercell does as a company in regards to some of their bigger projects. I hate to say it, but if Supercell doesn't reverse its current trajectory, it could very well end up sharing a reputation of being scummy as Voodoo, except Supercell would be able to say that they have 3 massively successful games that they still maintain under their belt, while shoving out shovelware slot behind closed doors. The fact that they bought another game studio to hide their tracks goes to show that they're going in the direction of cheap cash grabbing games, and is a massive red flag in of itself. The worst part is I'm already beginning to see some of this mentality of being more focused on cash grabs start to manifest inside of Supercell's games. Don't get me wrong, a game collaboration here and there is a healthy thing for a game to experience, as it brings in new players that otherwise wouldn't have heard of the game, yet each collaboration also slightly diminishes the identity of said game in the process. Now, I don't think Clash of Clans or Brawl Stars will end up like Fortnite anytime soon, but Supercell could end up going overboard in the pursuit of profit whilst eroding the identity of their games in the process. With the exception of Clash Royale for obvious reasons, Supercell are relatively sensible when it comes to balancing pay to win versus free to play progression. After all, it's hard to make Clash of Clans more pay to win, as some people are just really patient unless they increase upgrade times, which would just result in outrage from everyone. However, they seem to be partially borrowing Clash Royale's model when it comes to hypercharges inside of Brawl Stars, minus the fact that hypercharges are much easier to earn or work up for as opposed to evolution shards in Clash Royale. All of this indicates that Supercell is somewhat capable of maintaining a delicate balance in their old games, yet their inability to breathe that sort of delicate balance into any of their newer games, let alone any originality, will someday catch up to them unless they react in due time. Whether or not Supercell's Doomed hinges on whether you enjoy their games as well as their new products that they're offering. Although with Supercell's games slowly losing appeal amongst generations in favour of games such as Roblox, and Supercell's latest projects either flopping or remaining unprofitable, they soon may face a fight to prevent their demise.